You don't need anyone's approval. Master this one Stoic shift. Picture this. The world is still dark, your phone lights up the room. Without thinking, your hand reaches for it. Not to check the time, but to see who noticed you, who approved, who liked what you posted yesterday. And in that instant, before your feet even touch the floor, you've surrendered your peace of mind. You've given away your freedom to people who may not even remember your name tomorrow. This is the invisible contract most of us sign every single day. We crave validation the way a thirsty man craves water, and yet every sip leaves us drier than before. Now imagine another scene. A man stands in the Roman Forum. Around him, a crowd roars, some in praise, some in mockery. Senators whisper, generals judge, merchants gossip. To most, this would feel like life or death. But to the Stoic, it was nothing more than noise carried by the wind. A temporary chorus that could never touch the core of his soul. He knew a secret that we, in the age of constant scrolling, still haven't learned. You are free the moment you no longer need applause to live your truth. That is the shift. The one shift that breaks the chains so many carry unknowingly. Because what is applause really? It's just a sound. What is a like on your screen? A flicker of light. What is someone's approval? A judgment that can change tomorrow without reason. The ancients knew what we've forgotten. If your happiness depends on what others grant, you will never own your life. But here is the promise. By mastering this Stoic shift, you stop being a puppet pulled by invisible strings. You stop waiting for permission to live, to act, to speak, to be. You stop measuring your worth on scales that were never yours in the first place. This isn't about arrogance. It's not about rejecting everyone else. It's about reclaiming your independence, the quiet power to act with integrity, whether the crowd cheers or boos. Think about how much of your energy is wasted in the chase. Approval from strangers online, from bosses who may never be satisfied, from family members who want you to live their script, not your own. Every ounce of that energy could be redirected toward what truly matters. Building something real, something unshakable, something that can't be cancelled with a comment. And that is where we begin. Because in a world addicted to validation, the person who no longer needs it becomes untouchable. The person who finds freedom within becomes the one who cannot be manipulated from without. The person who refuses to bow to the crowd becomes the only one who truly stands tall. This is the path of the Stoic. This is the path waiting for you. Look closely at how approval controls modern life. You may not see the bars, but they are there. Every scroll through social media is a silent negotiation. Do they like me? Do they notice me? Am I enough in their eyes? Each post becomes less about expression and more about validation. Each silence feels like rejection. The prison is invisible, yet its grip is powerful. You wake up already measuring yourself against numbers on a screen that vanish in 24 hours. This trap doesn't stop with social media. It follows you into the office. You hesitate to speak in a meeting, not because you lack ideas, but because you fear how they will land. You chase promotions, not for growth, but for recognition. You shape your words, your clothes, your ambitions to match what you believe will win applause. And at home, the expectations continue. Parents, partners, friends, each carrying their silent verdicts about who you should be. Without realizing it, you bend under the weight of every judgment, living not as yourself but as a collection of performances. The Stoics would have called this slavery, not the chains of iron, but the chains of opinion. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. 2,000 years later, little has changed. Back then, it was the roar of the Roman crowd. Today, it's the endless scroll of strangers you'll never meet. Different stage, same play. And here lies the paradox. The harder you chase approval, the less peace you find. You gain recognition, but feel emptier. You get applause, but grow anxious about losing it. Approval is never permanent. It shifts, it fades, it turns against you. One day you're celebrated, the next you're forgotten, or worse, ridiculed. When your value rests on their judgment, your life swings like a pendulum between praise and blame, never steady, never calm. The invisible prison of approval keeps you restless. It makes you second-guess your instincts, censor your words, dull your fire. You may think you're free because no one holds you physically, but as long as your mood rises and falls on the approval of others, you remain behind unseen bars. The Stoics remind us that real freedom does not begin with the absence of chains, but with the absence of need. The need to be validated, applauded, accepted. And here's the sharpest truth. Most of the people whose approval you chase will never think about you again after today. Their likes, their comments, their passing praise vanish into the noise of their own distractions. Yet how much of your life is shaped by their fleeting attention? The prison exists not because they judge you, but because you hand them the keys to your inner peace. This is why the Stoics trained daily to resist the lure of validation. They knew that chasing approval makes you dependent on a currency you cannot control, and anything you cannot control is a threat to your freedom. To break free, you must first see the bars. That is the first step toward the shift. Why do we fall into this trap so easily? Why do intelligent, capable people still bend their lives around the opinions of others? The answer lies deep in our wiring. For most of human history, survival depended on belonging. To be cast out of the tribe meant danger, exposure, death. Approval wasn't luxury, it was life itself. Acceptance meant food, protection, shelter. Disapproval meant exile. So, our nervous system learned to treat social rejection as if it were a threat to survival. Even today, thousands of years later, your body reacts the same way. A negative comment feels like an attack. Silence on your post feels like abandonment. Disapproval from your boss feels like the edge of exile. Your heart races, your mind spirals. You feel the weight of judgment as if the tribe is circling with stones in hand. This is not weakness. It's evolution doing its job. But what kept us alive then enslaves us now. Because here's the truth. In the modern world, exile doesn't exist the way it once did. You won't die because strangers disapprove of you. You won't starve because a friend frowns at your choice. You won't be hunted because someone mocks your path. And yet, your mind reacts as if every judgment is life-threatening. You feel anxiety, hesitation, even paralysis. You hold back not because danger is real, but because your ancient wiring screams that approval is oxygen. The Stoics saw this clearly. They understood that fear of judgment was a distortion of reality. Epictetus reminded his students that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. It is not the frown of a stranger that enslaves you, but the story you tell yourself about what that frown means. It is not the silence after your words that destroys you, but your interpretation of that silence as rejection. When you live by others' judgment, you forfeit your own reason. You hand over the very faculty that separates you from the crowd, the ability to think, to decide, to act in line with what you know to be right. You become like a reed bent by every gust of wind, never standing firm, always swaying in response to the weather of other people's moods. This is why the Stoics called such dependence a form of madness. And yet, there's a deeper irony. The very approval you chase so desperately is never stable. People's opinions shift with fashion, with rumor, with their own insecurities. What they praise you for today, they may condemn you for tomorrow. When you crave their approval, you build your house on sand, and then you wonder why the ground feels shaky. To master the Stoic shift, you must first see how approval hijacks your instincts. It exploits an ancient survival mechanism that no longer serves you. It makes you believe you are in danger when in fact you are not. The first step toward freedom is recognizing this false alarm for what it is. When you feel that sting of disapproval, when you feel the itch for validation, pause and ask, am I really in danger, or is this my old wiring tricking me again? That question alone begins to break the spell. The moment of liberation begins with a single decision. Whose standards will you live by? The crowd's or your own? This is the Stoic shift, the turning of the gaze inward, the choice to measure yourself not by applause, but by principle. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, held power over millions. He could have ruled by chasing the approval of the Senate, the army, or the people. Yet when he wrote his private reflections, he wasn't asking, will they approve? He was asking, am I living in harmony with my own reason, with nature, with virtue? His meditations were never meant for publication. They were his private compass, reminders that the judgment of the crowd is noise compared to the clarity of conscience. The shift is simple in words, difficult in practice. Live by your own scorecard, not the shifting scales of the marketplace, not the unpredictable opinions of your family, not the fleeting waves of social media. Your scorecard must be anchored in virtue, courage, justice, wisdom, discipline. These are the measures the Stoics used because they cannot be taken from you. Think of how much energy is wasted when you ask, what will they think? That single question has killed more dreams than failure ever could. It stops the artist from creating, the entrepreneur from starting, the leader from speaking. But when you replace that question with the Stoic one, is this in line with my principles? Suddenly, the path clears. You are no longer tangled in a web of imagined judgments. You act because it is right, not because it will be praised. Epictetus taught his students that freedom comes from distinguishing what is in our control and what is not. Other people's opinions, not in your control. Their praise, their criticism, their silence, not in your control. Your actions, your choices, your character, entirely in your control. The Stoic shift is to stop bargaining with what is outside your power and to master what lies within it. And here's the paradox. The moment you no longer need approval, you often gain genuine respect. People sense when someone acts from inner conviction. They may not always like it, but they cannot ignore it. Independence commands attention in a way that desperation never can. This is why the Stoics walked unshaken through ridicule and praise alike. They knew both were equally irrelevant. You may fear that without approval you will feel alone, disconnected, unloved. But the opposite is true. When you stand on your own principles, you attract those who value truth over flattery. You connect with people who respect strength rather than weakness. The relationships that remain are stronger because they are not built on performance but on authenticity. The Stoic shift is not about arrogance or indifference. It is about alignment. It is about refusing to betray yourself in order to please others. It is about standing firm when the crowd sways, speaking truth when silence would win applause, choosing principle when compromise would gain approval. This is the inner revolution. This is how you move from slavery to freedom. Approval doesn't come in just one form. It wears many masks, each one seductive in its own way. To master the Stoic shift, you must learn to see these faces clearly, because only then can you break their hold over you. The first face is public approval. This is the applause of the crowd, the likes and comments, the recognition from strangers. It feels intoxicating because it comes in numbers, hundreds of eyes on you, voices echoing your name, the dopamine rush of instant attention. But it is also the most shallow. Public approval is given quickly and taken away even faster. It is ruled not by truth but by fashion, rumor, envy, and distraction. What the masses cheer today, they may boo tomorrow. To anchor your identity here is to build a house on shifting sand. The second phase is private approval. This comes from those closest to you, family, peers, mentors, colleagues. It feels deeper because it is personal. A father's pride, a teacher's praise, a friend's nod of acceptance. These can lift you higher than any stranger's applause. But even here lies a trap. Their expectations are often their own reflections, not your destiny. Parents may want you to follow their script. Friends may want you to conform to their comfort zones. Mentors may shape you in their image rather than help you find your own. When you build your life on private approval, you risk becoming a shadow of someone else's desires. The third phase is self-approval. This is the rarest, but it is the only one that endures. Self-approval doesn't mean indulging every whim or excusing every failure. It means living in alignment with your principles so that when you are alone in a silent room, you respect the person staring back at you. This is the approval Marcus Aurelius sought when he asked himself each night if he had lived according to reason. This is the approval Epictetus demanded when he reminded his students to act as if Socrates were watching. Self-approval is the one form that cannot be taken from you because it does not depend on shifting voices or fragile expectations. Notice how the first two phases enslave you to forces outside your control. Public approval makes you a servant of trends. Private approval makes you a servant of relationships. Both leave your peace in someone else's hands. Self-approval, on the other hand, is entirely within your control. It doesn't sway with gossip or fade with distance. It grows stronger every time you choose principle over applause, integrity over comfort, truth over flattery. The Stoic way is not to deny the first two phases completely. After all, we live among others, and their judgments will always echo in our lives. But the Stoic refuses to bow to them. He listens, but he does not obey. He respects, but he does not depend. His true compass points inward, to the one approval that matters, because when self-approval is strong, the other two lose their power to wound. Praise feels pleasant but unnecessary. Criticism stings but does not shatter. The voice within remains calm, steady, unshaken. This is the hierarchy the Stoics taught. Let public and private approval come and go like the wind, but guard self-approval as your fortress. Build it with actions, reinforce it with discipline, test it in silence. For when you own this inner approval, you walk through the noise of the world untouchable. History is full of people who chose truth over approval, and in doing so, discovered a freedom that applause could never grant. Consider the story of Socrates. Athens condemned him for corrupting the youth, for questioning the sacred traditions, for refusing to conform to the city's expectations. The crowd turned against him, and the sentence was death. But Socrates did not beg for mercy, nor did he reshape his words to win back favor. He drank the hemlock calmly, because he lived by one law only, to act according to reason and virtue. His enemies could strip his life, but they could not touch his self-respect. That is the kind of freedom approval can never buy. Move forward centuries and imagine Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history. He could have written speeches to sway the Senate, decrees to secure his image, or histories to polish his legacy. Instead, he wrote private notes to himself, reminders, meditations, warnings against vanity. He didn't write for applause. He wrote to master his own soul. His words survive today not because they were crafted for approval, but because they were forged in the fire of self-examination. Ironically, by ignoring approval, he earned respect for millennia. And then there are modern stories, less grand but equally powerful. Think of the artist who releases music no label wants to back, yet years later the world calls it genius. Think of the entrepreneur who rejects safe approval to follow an idea mocked by peers, only to build something extraordinary. Or even the ordinary worker who stops twisting themselves to please every boss, and instead takes pride in quiet craftsmanship. Approval may ignore them, but their peace comes from knowing they acted with integrity. What unites these stories is not defiance for the sake of rebellion. It is alignment. Each person refused to betray themselves for the temporary comfort of applause. They accepted the cost of disapproval because they valued truth more than flattery. And in doing so, they discovered a paradox. Those who need approval least often inspire it most. Those who chase it desperately are forgotten, but those who live by principle leave a mark that endures. The Stoics knew that every crowd is fickle, every chorus fades. What remains is the strength of your own judgment. When you live aligned with it, you become like the mountain that stands unmoved while winds scream at its peak. Whether the crowd cheers or boos, whether they crown you or crucify you, your footing remains steady. This is not detachment born of arrogance. It is detachment born of clarity. The freedom of someone who knows that truth is more valuable than applause, and that living by it is the only way to walk unshaken through the storm. Philosophy only becomes real when it turns into practice. The Stoics were not content with fine words. They demanded exercises, habits, daily actions that turned wisdom into muscle. If you want to master the shift from craving approval to standing free, you need tools, not theories. Here are 3 practices that will harden your mind against the hunger for validation. The first is the practice of silent victories. Achieve something and resist the urge to broadcast it. Finish a project, make progress in your training, keep a promise to yourself and tell no one. Why? Because silence forces you to feel the value of the act itself, not the echo of applause. When you break the reflex to share everything for validation, you train yourself to recognize that your worth is independent of recognition. The victory is real whether the world notices or not. The second tool is the self-journal check. Each night, write a simple line. Today was my action guided by virtue or by applause? Be honest. Did you help someone because it was right, or because you wanted to be seen as generous? Did you speak truth because it mattered, or because you wanted to sound impressive? This exercise strips away illusions. It trains your mind to separate real integrity from subtle performance. Over time, your compass sharpens. You stop needing to ask what others think because you've already judged yourself honestly. The third is the empty room test. Before acting, pause and ask, would I still do this if no one ever knew? If the answer is no, then you are chasing approval, not virtue. This question is merciless, but it is also liberating. It reveals how much of life is performance, and it invites you to reclaim the acts that matter for their own sake. Imagine living in such a way that every choice passes this test. Imagine the peace of knowing that your actions stand even when stripped of applause. These practices may sound simple, but they are weapons against one of the most seductive forces of modern life. Social media has turned validation into a drug, drip-feeding us approval until we forget what independence feels like. Silent victories detox the craving. The self-journal exposes hidden dependence. The empty room test builds immunity. Together they form a shield that no critic can pierce and no praise can bribe. The Stoics believed philosophy was not a set of ideas, but a way of training the soul. These exercises are your training ground. They demand discipline, honesty, and courage. But they also reward you with a kind of freedom most people never taste. The freedom of doing what is right, regardless of who notices. And once you've felt that freedom, you'll never want to trade it for applause again. One of the greatest traps of approval is that it makes us addicted not just to praise, but also vulnerable to criticism. We crave the high of recognition and, in the same breath, fear the sting of rejection. The Stoics taught that both are two sides of the same coin, and that coin should never be the currency of your life. Praise feels sweet. It lifts you, fuels you, and gives the illusion of certainty. But if you build your strength on it, you also hand over your weakness. Because the moment that praise disappears, you collapse. If your worth rises with their applause, it will sink with their silence. And when criticism arrives, as it always does, you feel shattered, as if the foundation of your identity has been ripped away. The Stoics called this slavery to externals. They argued that praise and blame are nothing more than sounds in the air. They are judgments shaped by moods, by biases, by ignorance. What one man applauds, another condemns. What one generation calls virtue, another calls folly. If your life depends on these shifting voices, you are no more stable than a leaf in the wind. Reframe both. Praise is not proof of your value, and criticism is not proof of your failure. Both are simply opinions, noise that cannot touch the essence of who you are. Epictetus reminded his students that when someone insults you, they are not describing you, but their own perception. And when someone praises you, they are not elevating your character, but reflecting their own preferences. In both cases, you remain the same. Think of it this way. If a stranger walked by and shouted your name with either hatred or love, would that change the truth of your being? Would it alter your courage, your discipline, your integrity? Of course not. Praise and criticism are reflections, not realities. They belong to others, not to you. The power lies in neutrality. When you learn to greet both applause and rejection with the same calm face, you become unshakable. You no longer chase the first or fear the second. You act because it is right, not because it will be praised. You stand firm because it is true, not because it will be admired. This is not about becoming cold or numb. It is about clarity. It is about remembering that your worth is anchored in principles, not in popularity. When you accept this, you move beyond the reach of both flattery and insult. And in that space, true freedom begins. Detachment is often misunderstood. People hear the word and imagine indifference, coldness, or the absence of care. But Stoic detachment is not about shutting yourself off from the world. It is about refusing to let the world dictate the state of your soul. It is the ability to stand in the storm without being carried away by its winds. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is watching. Most people adjust themselves immediately, fixing posture, softening words, seeking smiles. But the detached person does not perform. They are not arrogant, not dismissive, simply steady. They know who they are before entering, and they will be the same upon leaving. This steadiness is magnetic. People sense it. They respect it because it is rare. It is the weight of someone who does not beg for respect, yet commands it effortlessly. Freedom in detachment means no longer being enslaved by outcomes you cannot control. When you detach from approval, criticism loses its power. When you detach from status, comparison fades. When you detach from recognition, you discover a quieter joy in the act itself. The Stoics believed that detachment was the highest form of strength because it placed your well-being entirely in your own hands. Think of how many choices in your life are shaped not by what you want, but by what you fear others will think. How many times have you stayed silent, not because silence was right, but because you feared judgment? How many times have you agreed, not because you believed, but because you feared rejection? Detachment severs these strings. It allows you to act according to principle, even when the crowd boos, even when the faces you love disapprove. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that fame is nothing but smoke. Epictetus said that if you wish to be free, you must stop wishing for things outside your control. Together, these words form the essence of Stoic detachment, a soul anchored so firmly in its own reason that no storm can drag it into chaos. Detachment doesn't make you cold, it makes you calm. It doesn't make you distant, it makes you disciplined. It doesn't strip away love or connection. It strips away need, the need for constant validation, the need for others to confirm your worth. And when you no longer need, You finally have space to give freely, to act courageously, to love without chains. This is the kind of freedom that cannot be bought, cannot be granted, and cannot be taken. It is the freedom of standing before the world unmasked, unbent, and unshaken. Picture yourself walking into a crowded room. Conversations are buzzing, eyes are scanning, judgments are forming before words are spoken. Most people enter this space already shrinking, already adjusting themselves to fit what they believe others want to see. But not you. You step in without needing to prove, without needing to perform, without needing to earn invisible points of approval. You carry yourself with calm clarity. You know who you are, and nothing in that room can add to or subtract from it. This is the vision of the free individual, a person who no longer seeks to be validated at every turn, who has moved beyond the hunger for recognition and discovered the strength of self-respect. They are not arrogant. They are not loud. They are not trying to dominate the room. Their presence speaks without effort because it is rooted in inner steadiness. People notice not because they beg for attention, but because independence shines like a beacon in a world full of performers. The free individual is untouchable by gossip. Rumors may circle, but they do not pierce. The free individual is steady in failure. A mistake does not crumble their identity because their worth was never built on perfection. The free individual is steady in success. Applause does not intoxicate them because they know how fickle applause truly is. They walk the middle path, calm, composed, unshaken. This is what Stoicism points toward, an existence where you are no longer tossed about by the waves of opinion, but sail by your own compass. You are not blind to the world. You see it clearly. You hear the cheers and the jeers, but neither changes your course. You live aligned with virtue, and that alignment becomes your shield. Imagine the energy you reclaim when you no longer need approval. No more wasted hours rehearsing how others will judge you. No more sleepless nights replaying conversations. No more paralyzing hesitation before acting. That energy flows back into your work, your relationships, your craft, your peace. You are no longer a prisoner of appearances. You are the architect of your own life. The vision of the free individual is not a fantasy. It is a reality waiting to be built one decision at a time. Each act of principle over applause strengthens it. Each moment of integrity over performance shapes it. Each test passed in silence carves it deeper into who you are. Until one day you look around and realize the crowd may cheer, the crowd may boo, but you are no longer moved. You stand free. Return to the image where it all began. The dim light of morning, your hand reaching for the phone, your eyes searching for signs of approval before you've even spoken a word, or the Roman Forum, filled with the roar of a crowd that cheers one moment and condemns the next. These images remind us of the same truth. As long as your peace depends on others, you will never own it. The Stoics teach that the crowd will always shift. Today's applause turns into tomorrow's silence. Today's praise transforms into tomorrow's blame. And if you allow yourself to be pulled back and forth, you will spend your life as a servant to voices that never cared for your soul in the first place. But there is another path. The Stoic does not chase approval. He does not fear rejection. He walks on, guided by principle, unshaken by noise. His compass points inward, and because of that, he cannot be bought, bribed, or broken. This is the essence of freedom, the power to live by your own reason in a world addicted to validation. So hear this echo: the crowd will always cheer and boo, that will never change. What can change is you. The moment you no longer need their approval is the moment you step out of the prison and into freedom. The moment you stop seeking permission is the moment you begin to live. Now the choice is yours. You can continue handing over your peace to the shifting winds of opinion, or you can claim the freedom that comes from this Stoic shift. You don't need applause to live with courage. You don't need validation to act with integrity. You don't need permission to become who you were meant to be. If this message struck something within you, don't let it end here. Make this channel your training ground. Subscribe and return for more Stoic strategies. Not empty motivation, but daily discipline, mental armor, and the tools to master the chaos of modern life. Every video is a step deeper into the mindset of resilience, clarity, and inner mastery. Because this isn't about inspiration that fades in a day. This is about building strength that endures for a lifetime. Walk this path with me. Learn to stand unshaken in a world that begs for approval, because freedom isn't given. It's trained, forged, and chosen, and it begins now.